I just think it was time that, we legalized it, because ever since I know, when I was in college and beyond, people were using it, and we had to hide it, and it was a felony if you possessed it.
To a certain extent, I believe the younger generation of kids have now grown up with it being legal in Colorado, at least for the last 8 years, and so they tend to see things a lot of the way adults are, which is all good or all bad, and they're only taking in the good and not restricting themselves a little bit, or having some outside authority restrict that.
She just started high school. She came home within the first week saying, "I've noticed a lot of people smoke weed here." And my husband and I said, "All right, how do you feel about it?" And she said, "I may want to try it."
The best research suggests that in adults, cannabis use really isn't harmful long-term. It doesn't have any permanent effects. The same is not true for adolescents, especially adolescents under the age of 15. There is good research to suggest that there will be long-term, even permanent impacts to their intelligence, to their concentration, to their memory, to their overall development.
It's often seen as a gateway drug for some of our students, and to the dispensary owners, I would hope that they would commit to safety and the responsibility of keeping it out of the hands of children.
Regulating cannabis and putting it in a regulated industry is the most important thing to keeping it out of the hands of kids. In my mind, there's no way to do that any easier than to regulate it. ID people. That black market's not going to ID people.
When we got adult use marijuana passed, there was not a whole lot of regulation related to edibles. And they were in the form of gummies and things that were very appealing to kids. And there's dangers there. There's the appeal. There's the what message are we putting out there. There are a whole host of concerns as it relates to that kind of model and the products that were being put out in the early days.
Some of the packaging that I've seen, they've kind of farmed off on other candies or those kinds of things, and that makes it a little bit easier for the kids to mistakenly get that.
We did see a pretty significant increase in unintended exposure to THC in children who were getting access to their parents' edibles, who they'd left them laying around. So I think regulation of the product is important. I think making sure that we're doing our best not to market it to children, even if we're doing so indirectly, is important.
I just like it, make sure that if you're going to be doing that you understand what it is, and then the controls where you have them, you need to keep the kids away from.
Also, I would hope that parents would be responsible with not leaving it in places that are accessible to their own children, such as, cupboards, shelves, refrigerators.
I firmly believe that the best way in this legalized world to work from a prevention standpoint is to work with the industry. We have to work together to find policies that protect the social development and the social and emotional development of our youth. I think the proliferation of vape products for youth and underage youth is a crisis, as the Surgeon General put out there.
Smoking cigarettes had gone down to about 8%. Vaping had gone up to about 38%. And to me, that's a troubling issue.
I think the vaping issue is an interesting one because it points to the similarity, really, I think, ultimately between alcohol and marijuana in terms of how you talk to kids about it, how you educate about it, and how you handle public policy.
I think it's similar to Joe Camel back in the old days, and where the cigarette manufacturers were kind of showing how using tobacco was a really good thing.
For most adolescents that they're using a battery-driven device, it's not actual vaping. So while they call it vaping, they're still inhaling a combusted substance. The battery superheats the substance, and that heat is known to be a problem for the lungs. Whether it's cannabis or tobacco or even flavored liquid, if we're superheating something and taking that into our lungs, again, we're deviating from what our lungs were designed to do. And now we're finding that superheating some of those flavorings makes them carcinogenic.
There are a lot of dangers that we don't know, and the sad part about that is a lot of times it takes a while to understand and research those things to be able to get to the knowns so that we can make the changes that need to happen on policy to protect our youth.
We see it when we visit the middle schools and the high schools, and my friends' sons and daughters vape pretty regularly.
Our daughter came home and was talking about how kids get caught vaping in the bathroom a lot. One of her friends told her that she's addicted to it.
When an individual smokes marijuana out of a bowl or out of a joint, it has a starting point and an ending point, and you can control how much you're using. It's hard for us to estimate what use looks like if an individual is waking up with a vape pen and they spend the day puffing on their vape pen. That's basically keeping them intoxicated for the entire day, and that's a significant shift.
Most of the youth that are using vape right now are really using it for those flavored vapes that you were talking about. The risk, I guess, is are they then transitioning to cannabis products that are going to have a potential for impact later on in life?
I just think vaping as a whole has got some very serious health issues we need to look at, especially in younger students. It struck me because I had no idea that vaping was so high in our K through 12 students.
The impact of the cannabis industry on the local Fort Collins, our local community, has been massive, actually. I mean, we not just in all the employees that we have here at our dispensaries, but when you talk about the peripheral businesses like the HVAC companies, the electrical companies, the video surveillance companies, when you get all of that going, it's really fueling our economy.
Cannabis is a $7-8 billion a year industry. And we know in about 4 or 5 years, it's going to be a $50 to $75 billion a year industry.
We were promised and told that, the money from marijuana was going to go to education and go to schools, but we would like to, have some documentation of which schools it's going to, which children it's helping, and where it's all going.
Colorado state law forbids any public money, publicly traded or publicly owned companies, money from owning any of the licenses. And that restricts the investors to retail investors, mom and pop investors, people and companies that have some investment money, but not Wall Street money. And that has stopped a great deal of the activity that would normally boost a fledgling industry like this.
That being said, there's legislation that will be introduced that will be hopefully changing that. So then we would be able to have out-of-state money come in. When you want to add that out-of-state money, a lot of people throw big pharma words out there, big tobacco. There's always good and bad in both of those, I believe. Obviously, more research money is going to be brought in and stuff to that nature when those kind of people come in. The bad part of it is it's Walmart. With all due respect, the quality and different things like that, you're mass producing stuff now. You're going to lose the small mom and pops people.
I believe in the small businesses that have evolved out of our passing Amendment 20 in 2000 and Amendment 64 in 2012, and there's a lot of people who did a lot of work on this, and I am very concerned for the small businesses.
The people getting into this industry, it seems to me, are of two types. One is a group that's been involved with cannabis their whole lives and are, maybe growing it in their mom's basement and now have an opportunity to go legal. The other type are the people that are looking to capitalize on what's been kind of a simmering potentiality only for years and are jumping in at all levels.
Right now, there's this Wild West rush to be one of the 3, 4, 6 companies that are really going to be the quote unquote, or have the potential to be those Apple companies.
And once it spreads across all the states and it starts going where we can transfer stuff interstate to interstate and even across country lines, you're going to see a bigger, what they call a green boom, even bigger than what we're seeing these days.
In 2009 and 2010, when we first got into this business, we got into this business for the medical side of it. We were there for the medical patients. We were there because we knew it was going to help people. And at the time, we had no idea that this industry was going to boom and become what it has become. We had no idea that recreational retail marijuana cannabis was going to be coming on board. But we got in it for the medical reasons. We're still in it for the medical reasons.
My position before I was a legislator was I was in favor of medical marijuana, and if people wanted to use it for recreational purposes, I did not have an issue with that.
My attitude changes all the time. I had 2 former students that were diagnosed with terminal brain cancer this last year, and they both used marijuana as a pain management to get through it. And we saw amazing results from their use. So I was very pro medicinal marijuana.
I have a granddaughter who has been using some of the CBD oil to help with her nervous disorder that she has, and it appears to be helpful for her.
There's a fairly significant lag in what we know about the medicinal benefits of cannabis. Primarily, we have no idea about dose. So we know that in certain cases, people are using marijuana, for instance, to reduce symptoms of social anxiety. But as a psychologist or as a medical doctor, no one can actually tell you how much marijuana you should use or how often you should use it in order to reduce your social anxiety symptoms. So this would be akin to going to a doctor, the doctor telling you that you have diabetes and then giving you a bottle of pills and saying, take this sometime, however you want. I don't know what's in here or what it will do for you. That's not really reassuring. And so I think we need to do a lot of research. In fact, my lab is doing some research now to focus in on what is a proper dose of marijuana, especially for what you want to use it for.
Last year, there was a bill I co-sponsored about the use of medical marijuana for disabling conditions, especially for autism spectrum disorders. And I walked into this committee meeting, of which I chaired, as the chair of health, the House Health Committee, and I already had my mind up that this was not a good thing because it involved children. So I walked in there thinking that I would be a no on this, and then when I saw the parents and the children and the videos of the children before they were taking medical marijuana and after, I was totally I totally turned my answer from a no to a yes. These parents had nowhere else to turn, and their children had just, to me, it was helpful, and it was helping them, and I just thought, if this is the only thing that they have and this is helping, then why not?
So with the epidemic out of the fentanyl and the opioid addictions that are going across the United States right now, they are finding out in states like Colorado, Oregon, Washington, where they've had some research done about cannabis actually bringing and helping people come off of the fentanyl, coming off of the opioids, and being able to move on with their lives in a more normal fashion and not becoming sick or not overdosing and dying on the opioids, especially with the fentanyl and the reactions that are happening over the last few years.
Cannabis is the exact opposite of the fentanyl. I have seen people come in on opioids, and I have seen them wean themselves off of the opioids using cannabis alone. I mean, it's been incredible, really.
A lot of the pain relieving stuff that we have is not good for your liver, not good for your stomach. And it's helped her. If it's going to help somebody like that to manage their pain and help with neurological stuff, help even through some of the cancer therapies, and it decreases people's pain and allows them to continue some quality of life with this, then we should use it.
When legalization occurred, we definitely had some reservations about how this was going to move forward and whether or not it was going to be a good thing for Colorado, and how well were we going to be able, we being the industry, to maintain our structure and not let it get out of hand.
It's been a polarizing subject. There are states throughout the union that are going to be adamantly opposed to it and are going to fight it tooth and nail. And then there are other states that are starting to see it, and the dominoes are starting to fall.
Well, I'm pretty sure it could go national because Colorado's done very well with making an awful lot of tax money. And I noticed that the other states have been looking at that. They're a little bit envious of the tax funds that are coming into Colorado.
What we saw in Colorado was a significant uptick in tourism, a significant uptick in out-of-state applications to all of our universities, and a significant uptick in people moving from out of state. We also saw interesting things like the number of conventions that were hosted in Colorado increased dramatically. Everyone wanted to have their convention or their conference meetings here.
We are a platform for other states to watch and learn and to take the regulations and the things that Colorado has done, mostly correct. Obviously, in any new industry or anything new, you're going to have a few mistakes here or there.
A lot of states villainized Colorado for legalizing and being the first one through the fence. And so there's still this sentiment we're seeing in the prevention world of people going, Colorado's bad, don't follow what they did. And really I go, you should follow what we did because we've been doing it the longest and there's a lot of lessons to be learned.
One of the things most people outside of Colorado don't understand is that while recreational marijuana is legal to use in Colorado, it needs to be used in private. You can't use it in public. So it's not like we have people standing on street corners smoking marijuana any more than we did before recreational marijuana was legal. And it's still illegal to use those substances in public spaces.
We are doing everything that we can to structure this in a way that can be passed on to other states so that they can follow in the same footsteps. That's a huge burden on Colorado and on us as the cannabis industry, is to make sure we get this done and get it done right.
The key to success is regulation, and to really use smart, effective regulation to prevent the negative and protect the positive.
The regulation is what's kept the feds away from us and allowed Colorado to do what they've done. It's allowed the skeptics to come around some too, because there's information now that is researched and done by the proper people. So regulations are the true backbone of the industry.
I think the level of regulation in Colorado is reasonable given the public kind of doubt about and lingering reservations that they have about marijuana generally. There are a few that seem arbitrary and a little mean-spirited, but for the most part, I think they're reasonably calculated to protect the public.
The cannabis industry is very much involved in that. They help create the code of ethics that they subscribe to and swear to. They are very involved in industry issues, hot topics, trying to inform what they're seeing in their stores.
And I think this state-by-state approach in the end will show itself to be very beneficial for the states that are that are a little bit later getting into the game.
Quite honestly, this experiment has proven to be truly successful.